Very good morning to all. Hope you are doing well. Let us start with today's class. Today we are going to discuss the remaining part of Great Elegy written in a country churchyard. Let me remind you that this poem mourns the death of poor rustic people who died without any recognition and fame. They remained unhonored as no opportunities were given to them, though they had great potential during their lifetime. In the stanza that we discussed the last time, the writer was reflecting that they could not get honor and self-satisfaction from their conduct and looks. Their poverty and limited resources not only checked the growth of their virtues but also prevented them from committing crimes which are very common among men of high position. So let us begin with the next paragraph or stanza. The struggling pangs of conscious truth to hide, to quench the blushes of ingenious shame, or heap the shrine of luxury and pride with incense kindled at the muse flame. The struggling, fighting hard, pangs, pain, conscious truth which was known to them. Hide, to keep secret, to struggling, pangs of conscious truth to hide means the village forefathers could not hide the pangs or pain which they experienced sometimes in hiding the truth. They were truthful. To quench the blushes of ingenious shame. To quench means to extinguish. The blush, shyness. Ingenious, free and frank. Shame, shyness again. So, to quench the blushes of ingenious shame means to extinguish the blushes due to genuine natural bashfulness or the shamefulness. The expression quench the blushes is taken from Shakespeare. Or heap the shrine of luxury and pride. To heap means to accumulate, to enrich themselves. Shrine of luxury and pride of those people who were proud and live in luxury. With incense kindled at the muse flame. With incense, offerings. Kindled, burnt. Muse's flame, poetic inspiration. Heap, together. Flame, poetic inspiration. So, the writer says, ambitious people do mean acts to achieve their ends. They stoop to murder and bloodshed to occupy the throne. They stifle their conscience. They lose all sense of shame and self-respect. They compose poems full of flattery to honor the rich and great men so they may get their patronage. But if we talk about the poor villagers, they were prevented to do such mean acts for getting high posts. They did not lose their feelings for truth and honesty. They were not mean flatterers of great people. So here the writer is saying that if they were not given any opportunities, it was not their fault. Because whenever the opportunities are given, not only the good things or the virtues come out, but also some vices are accompanied. So these people, if they were not given any kind of opportunities, they will not show their potential. It also gave them a chance to get bewildered by the vices of the society. They will not get involved in them. They were truthful and they remained so throughout their life. So let us come to the next stanza. Far from the madding crowd's ignoble strife, their sober visage never learned to stray. Along the cool sequestered vale of life, they kept the noiseless tenor of their way. Far. Far means at a great distance. Madding, busy. The madding crowd, the thick gathering of the people who were fanatic like mad person. Far from the madding crowds, ignoble strife. Ignoble means low, mean. Strife, quarrels, fights. Their sober visage never learned to stray. Sober visage means simple aspirations learned to stray, went away from the path of righteousness and virtues along the cool sequestered vale of life. Vale, valley, sequestered, secluded, isolated. Vale of life, valley of life. Vale of life here in this expression we can say that life here is compared to a valley which is full of peace. They kept the noiseless tenor of their way. They spent noiseless without creating sensation. Tenor, course of life. So here the poet compares the lives of the poor people with that of the urban people and establishes their superiority over the sophisticated urban people. The cities are overpopulated. Crowds of innumerable people live in cities, but they have no fellow feelings. They breathlessly run after their wishes and desires. On the other hand, if we talk about the village people, they lived far away from city atmosphere, far from the madding crowd. They were free from hustle and bustle of crowds which acted madly or in a frenzied manner. Their sober visage never learned to stray. They were not the slaves of their desires. They had only simple desires. They lived in calm and peaceful atmosphere along the cool sequestered vale of life. They were free from all sorts of physical temptations. They kept the noiseless tenor of their way. They enjoyed peace of mind and soul. Thus, their way of living was free from unnecessary struggle and tension as was found in the life of sophisticated urban societies. So, let us come to the next stanza. Yet, even these bones, from insult to protect, some frail memorial still erected high, nigh, with uncouth rhymes and shapeless sculpture decked, implores the passing tribute of a sigh. Yet, even these bones, the bones of these rustic people, from insult to protect, in order to save them from oblivion and the insult in that nobody has written any lines upon their tombs. Some frail memorial, frail, some weak memorial, a kind of memorials as opposed to trophies raised over the tombs of the rich, still erected near and standing, with uncouth rhymes. Uncouth rhymes means verses. Rhyme means verse form, poem, composed by country poets, illiterate persons. Uncouth means which were not measured, no meter was there in them. Shapeless sculpture, the frail memorials are beautified by the rhymes of the country poet. Implores the passing tribute of a sigh. Implores, request, the passing tribute of sigh, the feeling of sympathy and appreciation for the country gentleman lying buried in the graves. So, here the writer says that the poor graves of the rustics have no grand memorials erected over their graves. There are majestic monuments of rich people quite near their graves. For the poor also there are erected some memorials, but these are poor in kind. They have no sculptural significance and are erected near their graves. The engravings over them have no sculptural beauty and are rough and ugly. The lines engraved on these memorials were composed by some illiterate persons. These simple graves of the rustics ask earnestly for the sympathy of the passerby. So let us come up to the next stanza. Their name, their years, spelt by the unlettered muse, the place of fame and and elegy supply, and many a holy text around sea strews that teach the rustic moralist to die. Their name, their ears, spelt by the unlettered muse, means the country poet who was very little understanding of poetry has written on their graves their names and the years of their life. The names and the years have been spelt wrongly. Spelt by the unlettered muse means they are composed by some illiterate person. The place of fame and elegy supply. Instead of the long epitaphs on the tombs of the grave, that is here on the memorials, are simple things written by the unlettered poet of the country, and the object of the writing is to provide fame and mourning for the persons lying in the graves. And many a holy text around she strews. Many a holy text, the words and phrases from the Holy Bible, She, most of the poetic talent of the country poet. Scrooge scatters that teach the rustic moralist to die. The holy extracts from the scriptures teach the country people to die cheerfully. So the poet says that no ornamented trophies or memorials are raised for the poor rustics, only there are simple and ordinary memorials for them. Over their tombs, their names and years are inscribed. These were written by uneducated, illiterate persons. That is why they are wrongly spelled. There are no long epitaphs on their tombs, as are found on those of the rich. Yet there are on their tombs many beautiful sentences from the Bible, such as, "I love them that love me," etc. These small sayings are scattered over their tombs. They give spiritual consolation to the rustics. They inspire the people to them to meet death cheerfully. Let us come to the next stanza. For who, to dumb forgetfulness, a prey, this pleasing anxious being, ever resigned, left the warm pressings of the cheerful day, nor cast one longing, lingering look behind. Prey? Prey means a victim. Pleasing anxious being, life full of pleasures and anxieties. Precinct, enclosure. Cheerful day, happy days of their life. Nor cast one longing, lingering look behind, without looking wistfully at the things which are being left behind after death. Here the writer says that not only the rich but the poorest of the poor also desires to be remembered after death. Life, despite its worries, poverty and attendant miseries, is yet so sweet and pleasant that nobody, howsoever poor and humble he might be, willingly leaves the world. For who, to dumb forgetfulness, a prey, this pleasing anxious being ever resigned. People know that death is a dark world where everything is forgotten. Therefore, they are reluctant to leave this world, which by contrast is warm, pleasant and blissful. So, at the time of death, everyone looks back on pleasant scenes of life, left the warm precincts of the cheerful day, nor cast one longing, lingering look behind. So, at the time of death, everyone looks back on pleasant scenes of life and most unwillingly leave it, casting all the while an eager and delaying look upon the world which he prefers. His body is literally dragged towards death, but his soul eagerly looks backwards the scenes of his physical life. Next stanza. On some fond breast, the parting soul relies, some pious drops the closing eye requires. Even from the tomb, the voice of nature cries. Even in our ashes live their wonted fires. Fond breast means some person who is very much living, who is very much loving. Parting soul, the person who is dying. Relies, depends upon. Pious drops, tears. Closing eye, the person who is dying. So, even from the tomb, the voice of nature cries. Even after being buried in the grave, the desire of being remembered is expressed in the form of inscriptions. Wanted, accustomed. In our ashes live their wonted fires. Even when we are buried in our graves, the old desire of being remembered continues and is expressed in the form of inscriptions. So here the writer says that the dying man relies some loving friend. He needs the pious tears of affection from him. That is, he wants that his friend or acquaintance or relative, whoever they may be, may shed tears when he is departing from this world. He wants his memory to remain here, and it is but natural. Not only this, when after his death all is dust and ashes, the natural desire that one should be remembered after death seems to be crying, and the fire that was accustomed to be in those ashes, that is his soul, finds expression in the inscriptions on the tomb. Thank you all. For today it's enough, and tomorrow we will discuss the remaining poem. Thank you all.